What's going on, guys? Arrow here, and guys, today we're going to be talking in depth about another ability inside of Splatoon 2. And I know a few of you guys asked me about this ability on my previous video, and so the ability we're going to be talking about today is Sub Power Up. Now this is a brand new ability that's inside of Splatoon 2, and it wasn't in the previous version of Splatoon on the Wii U. And once again, just like the special power-up ability, if you try reading about this ability inside of the game, it just gives you a very vague description by saying improves the proficiency of your sub-weapons. And so once again, it doesn't tell you at all what this ability actually does to the sub-weapons, and so that's what I'm going to be talking to you guys about in this video. I'm going to be giving you all of the changes to all of the sub-weapons by using the sub power-up ability. Now like I said in the last video, I know Nintendo said that they are working on new sub-weapons which are going to be added to the game via updates, and so if you guys are watching this video in the future once like new sub-weapons are already out, then I'll have a list of those changes once they're found out as the pinned comment that'll be down below, so you guys can definitely check on that if you guys are watching this in the future and new weapons are out. But anyways, let's super jump right into this. Alright, so the first sub-weapon that we have here is the Auto Bomb sub-weapon, and this is a brand new sub-weapon inside of Splatoon 2, and it's basically a little bomb that you throw anywhere and it'll look for nearby enemies, and then if it can find any, it's going to walk over to them and then detonate. So it's a cool little sub-weapon, and if you're using the sub power-up ability with this sub-weapon, you're going to get an increase to the throw range, so that's going to be pretty useful. You're going to be able to throw it farther, so if you know enemies are hiding farther away from you, if you have a lot of this sub power-up ability with this sub-weapon, you're going to be able to throw the Auto Bomb farther, so it's going to have a better chance of detonating on far away enemies. So I think that that's a pretty useful upgrade to have on this sub weapon. Next up is the Burst Bomb, and now this bomb is returning from the previous version of Splatoon, and it's a cool little bomb. It's like a water balloon, and as soon as it makes contact it explodes, so it's a cool little bomb to use. And if you're using the sub power up ability with this sub weapon, you're going to get an increase to the throw range, so I still think that that can be pretty useful as you're not going to be making much contact if you're farther away and you can throw the bomb further away. So I think that that can still be pretty useful, and it's a good change to have on the Burst Bomb sub weapon. Alright, the next sub-weapon that we have here is the Curling Bomb sub-weapon, and this is a brand new sub-weapon that's inside of Splatoon 2, and if you guys have used the Curling Bomb sub-weapon, then you know it's like a little Roomba that you can pretty much throw anywhere, and it's cool because it leaves a trail of ink that you can travel in. It also bounces off walls, and then after a little bit it explodes, and if anyone's nearby, it'll detonate on them, so that's pretty cool sub-weapon to use. And if you're using the sub power-up ability with this sub-weapon, you're actually going to get a cool change because the Curling Bomb speed is going to increase, so that can actually be really useful, especially if you know somebody is nearby and if you want to throw the curling bomb. If it's going to travel much faster, it's going to give the opponent less time to escape, so that's a pretty big change, and I think a lot of sub power-up abilities stacked with this can definitely make this a pretty deadly sub weapon, so that's a pretty good change to have. Alright, now the next sub-weapon that we have here is the Ink Mine sub-weapon, and this is another sub-weapon that's returning from Splatoon on the Wii U, and so this is a cool sub-weapon because you can place it anywhere, and if an enemy walks near it or if it walks over it, then it's going to explode, do some damage, and now in Splatoon 2, I'm pretty sure it also like reveals their position on the map, so that's a pretty cool sub-weapon to use. And if you're using the sub power-up ability with this sub-weapon, it's actually going to increase the range that it can detonate, so that's going to be useful, so you can have a bigger range of having people be able to hit it and take damage from it, so that can still be a pretty big use to have on the Ink Mine sub weapon. Now the next sub-weapon that we have here is the Point Sensor sub-weapon, and this is also a sub-weapon that returns from the previous Splatoon, and it's a cool sub-weapon because you can throw this anywhere, and if any enemies are nearby, it's instantly going to show you their location, and it shares their location with all of your teammates, so it can be a pretty useful sub-weapon to use. And it's going to be really cool if you're using the sub power-up ability because you're going to be able to throw this farther, and so that's going to be cool because if you know there's a group of enemies in an area somewhere, you don't have to get really close to share that information with your teammates. You can be pretty far away if you now have bigger range to throw this, so that's going to be pretty useful, and it can definitely help out your team to know where the enemies are, so that if you're playing a big mode like Rainmaker, you can go in a different direction if you know all of your enemies are on one side, so it can still be a pretty big change to the sub weapon. Alright, now the next sub-weapon that we have here is a pretty cool one that's also returning from Splatoon 1, and this is the Splash Wall sub-weapon. So this is like that little wall that you can put anywhere you want on the map, and it's going to block any enemy attacks that are coming at you from the other side of the wall, so it's a cool sub-weapon to use. And if you're using the sub power-up ability with this sub-weapon, it's actually going to increase the durability of the wall, so that's going to be good because the opponents are going to have to hit it a little bit harder if they want to destroy it, so that's going to be useful if you want to get a little bit more protection from your splash walls, so I can still see a little bit of use coming from that sub weapon. Next up, we've got the basic Splat Bomb sub weapon. So this is like that default sub weapon that pretty much you all start out with when you start out playing Splatoon and Splatoon 2. So the Splat Bomb is basically just a little bomb that you throw anywhere and it explodes. Pretty simple bomb to use, and so there's not many changes that the sub power-up ability can do to this. So all that's going to happen is you're going to be getting an increased throwing range, so that can still be pretty useful. The Splat Bomb is definitely one of my favorite like normal bombs to use, and so if you're having a bigger range to throw it, that can definitely make a difference, especially if like a tower is coming to you in tower control and you can throw it right onto the tower, or if you don't have to be that close to where all the combat is in splat zones and you can throw the bomb farther away. I think that that's pretty cool and it can still be pretty useful, so that's a good change to have with the sub power up ability for this sub weapon. Alright, next up we've got the Sprinkler sub weapon, and now this is also a sub weapon that returns from Splatoon 1, and it's a cool sub weapon because you can put this on the floor or even the walls and ceiling, and it's just going to keep spatting out ink for a little bit until after a while it's just going to explode by itself or until an enemy shoots it down. But what's really cool is that the Sprinkler actually has a little bit of time when it's shooting out ink at a faster rate and the ink's coming out much faster, and then it's going to slow down and shoot ink at a slower rate. But what's really cool is if you're using the sub power up ability with this sub weapon, the time that it has for shooting faster ink at a faster rate is going to be extended, so you're going to be able to cover more ink on the ground, and it can definitely be a pretty good use to have on the Sprinkler sub weapon. Alright, now the next sub weapon that we have here is the Suction Bomb sub weapon, and I'm sure you guys can predict what the change is going to be to using the sub power up ability on this sub weapon after seeing all the changes from the other bombs. And so yes, if you're using the Suction Bomb with the sub power up ability, you're going to be getting an increased range, and I still think that having a better range on any of the bombs inside of Splatoon can be useful, and especially because of how the Suction Bomb is going to stick to things. If in a mode like Tower Control, when the tower is coming towards you and you can make the Suction Bomb stick onto a tower, if you have more range and you can throw the bomb earlier, it can still make a pretty big difference, and I still think that having more range can definitely make a big difference with the Suction Bomb sub weapon. Alright, so next up we've got the Squid Beacon sub weapon, and now this is a pretty helpful sub weapon because it lets you put this beacon wherever you want on the map, and any of your teammates are able to super jump towards this beacon whenever they want at any time. But what's really cool about this sub weapon is the change that happens when you're using the sub power up ability on it. Now if you're using the sub power up ability with the Squid Beacon, it's actually going to increase the speed of the super jump to any teammates that are coming to your beacon. So that can definitely be really useful, especially in a competitive mode when you need teammates to get to you really fast. If you've got a lot of sub power up abilities with the Squid Beacon, that means your teammates are going to be able to get to you really fast, and so that can definitely make a really big difference. And so I think that the Squid Beacon definitely has one of the most unique changes to using the sub power up ability. And finally, the last sub weapon that we have here is the Toxic Mist sub weapon. And so this is a pretty cool sub weapon because it lets you throw it wherever you want, and it's going to create like a little smoky area, and if any enemies are caught inside of this area, it's going to start to drain their ink and also make them move slower, so it's a pretty good way to annoy any enemies that are nearby. And if you're using the sub power up ability with this sub weapon, you're going to be able to throw the Toxic Mist a little bit farther, so that's going to be pretty useful if you know enemies are far away, and if you don't want to get really close to use the Toxic Mist on them, you can throw it from farther away. But also keep in mind though that the sub power up ability isn't going to increase the radius of the Toxic Mist, so the size of the mist is still going to be the same. It's just that you're going to be able to throw the Toxic Mist from far away. And so there you go guys, those are all of the sub weapons that are inside of Splatoon 2 and all of the ways that the sub power up ability changes these sub weapons. If this video helped you guys out, then please be sure to click that like button and also comment down below on any other abilities that you want me to cover inside of Splatoon 2, as well as any other tips that you guys have for Splatoon 2 players as well. I'm always curious to see what you guys have to say. If you're new to this channel, then be sure to subscribe. I've got a lot of cool Splatoon 2 content that's going to be coming out later, as well as some Nintendo content that's going to be coming in the future as well, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Go follow me on Twitter at ActualArrow if you ever want to tweet me something or ask me something. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.